Last week's video, I walked you through how I played par 5. I just picked one at random and just showed you some strategies on how to play it. This week, I'm going to take you through some par 3s, par 4s, some different holes, show you some other looks, talk about some of the different strategies that we can employ to try and save ourselves some strokes. Let's get into this one. Hey everybody, welcome back to GolfTestDummy, the channel where I use my game to help your game. As you can see, I'm already away on this par 4 with my tee shot. Now this hole was about 380. I'm now left with 134 yards, 134.8, so it's 135. And I'm sitting dead middle of the fairway with a pin that looks like it's dead center of the green. This is a very common thing that golfers experience. It's actually a meme if you look on Instagram or TikTok. Oh, here's another one. I blasted down the middle of the fairway only to just destroy the hole with my wedge. Dead center pin, dead center of the fairway, fairly level. This is like a textbook scenario. So why do we blow up on shots like this? Do you feel a lot of pressure on you to pull off this shot? Maybe that you're just not comfortable from the yardage that you've left yourself. I've got 135 here that's actually kind of in between clubs for me. Is that one of the things that's messing you up? But ask yourself that question, why from here would you fail? And I'll tell you one thing that I suspect is a major reason why so many of us as average amateur golfers fail from this position. We under club. We really don't know our yardages. We haven't charted them out. We haven't taken into account all of the factors, like when you're outdoors, the weather, the humidity, the temperature, the wind, and you make poor club selections. About 60-something% of the shots that average amateur golfers take from around 150 yards come up short. And so, what's the play here? Are you the type to muscle up a 9-iron and try and get an extra 7 or 8 yards out of it? I'll tell you what I do. I'm going to go with the 9-iron. I'm not going to go with the wedge because actually the faster you hit a more lofted club like a wedge, it really just goes a lot higher. It doesn't go a lot further. So how do you take a 9-iron and dial it back a little bit? Do you take your effort level down? Maybe you try and swing it a little bit slower, maybe a little bit smoother. That might work for some of you. Or do you make a swing that travels less distance? Like me, for instance, when I set up, if I've got 135 yards, I know my normal 9-iron goes 145. I need to take about 10 yards off of it. A normal 9-iron swing for me is probably going to be about the 10 o'clock position. I could take this to the 9 o'clock position. Make a normal swing, a 9 o'clock 9-iron I would call it, and probably get fairly close to this. I'm just going to go right at the middle. That's where I'm normally aiming on most holes anyways, right at the middle of the green. This is pretty convenient. And that's going to draw just a little bit more than I wanted it to. But flying out to 135, carrying out to 140, it's a little left. It was good solid contact. I went a little bit further than I wanted to, but because I was aiming for the middle of the green, if I go a little left or a little right, a little long or a little short, I'm good to go. Gives me a chance to make a 2-putt par from there, or maybe even an outside chance at a birdie, which, by the way, when golfers of the average amateur status are in the 6 to 9 foot range, okay, so just inside of 10 feet, you're going to make about 40% of those if you're lucky. If you're on the higher handicap end of the spectrum, you're probably going to make even less than that, maybe a quarter of the putts you take inside of 10 feet you're going to make. But aiming for the middle of the green is rarely a bad way to go. Okay, next hole. We're going to the average amateur golfer's nemesis. For most of you, some of you may play the par 3s pretty well, but I've got a really short par 3 here. It's 114 yards, but it's also got a 33-foot drop-off, meaning that the green is 33 feet below us. Now, in case you didn't know, the elevation difference between the landing area and where you're hitting from, that difference, whether it be uphill or downhill, that's going to make a big difference. For me, 114 yards, I'm going to pull an approach wedge. However, with this going downhill 33 feet, it's going to take that distance from 113 or 114 down a little bit. Now, how much does it go down? Well, it really will kind of depend on your ball flight. Is it coming in at a steeper descent angle? Because if it's coming in at a pretty steep descent angle already with like a wedge or something like that, and it's 33 feet down, it's really not going to travel much more further forward as it's traveling further down. If you get into something like, say, a 7-iron that's coming in more of a descent angle like this, almost like a 44, 45 degree angle, then if it's 33 feet down the hill, it's actually going to travel quite a bit further forward as it's traveling down. But with this being a wedge, it's really not going to take that much off. So instead, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull that same approach wedge and I'm going to look at the green complex. I know that if I miss it a little bit long, that's not that big of a deal. If I miss it a little short, based on where the pin is, the pin's kind of almost centrally located. Again, I've got some green to work with. I've got some good spots to miss it here. But instead of playing my full 10 o'clock approach wedge, I'm going to play my 9 o'clock approach wedge and see what that gets me. I believe that's going to be pretty good. That should knock about 10, maybe 12 yards off of this shot. And then if I get any extra out of it, it'll be because of the extra 33 feet the ball is going to fall. So let's set in here and make a 9 o'clock approach wedge swing. Nice smooth swing. Traveling out. Oh, it's going way deep. Way deep, but I'm on the back fringe there. That carried out to 128. Now, I'll be quite honest. I hit that really solid. Really solid. Probably one of the purest strikes I've had with this wedge in, I don't know, let's say 100 shots. I ended up toward the back of the green. This is fine. I had that much green to work with. I thought about that and strategized before. Now, if that pin had been more toward the front, maybe I go with a 54 to try and play more to the front of the green. I look on my GPS or my laser and I try and figure out how close it is to the front of the green, and then a couple of steps on, and maybe I play to that, maybe go a little bit deep if I need to be safe. But this was a pretty centrally located pin. I had the strike of a lifetime on it. I can't really help that, but now I've got just a little chip and a putt to try and save par. 40 feet. Again, with this device, I have to use a 60 in order to get it to register, but this is basically where your scoring is made. I'm now out of position a little bit. I'm now not on the green with this par 3 with a legit shot at birdie, and it's 40 feet away. 40 feet away. It's easy for average amateur golfers from 40 feet away to flub this chip or thin it over the green and then have some kind of 2 or 3 putt coming back and make a double bogey on this hole. I just want to get it down there, cozy it into, let's say, I don't know, somewhere inside of a 6 to 8 foot circle and give myself a chance at saving my par. Somewhere in that area. It's going to roll down there, roll out to 6 foot 4 inches. Now, from 6 feet, my odds of making that putt are somewhere around 60, 65% as an amateur golfer. But at least I gave myself a shot at par, and I didn't take a big number and put it in play. Let's look at another hole. This hole is a perfect hole to put on this video. This is a par 4. If you were looking on the scorecard and you saw a 276 yard par 4, you'd be licking your chops. You'd be like, oh man, I can't wait to get there and hit driver and get as close to this green as possible and chip in to make eagle, or put it on the green and have a putted eagle. Not so fast. This fairway is not one solid piece of fairway going all the way down. It's broken. To the end of this fairway is 193 yards. From there up until about 240 yards, this is thick rough. Not to mention the fact that you're kind of hemmed in by some trees the further down you go. This is a classic trap for golfers. You pull out your driver, you're going to try and smoke one down there, but you're a slicer. 85% of you are slicers. You're much more likely to end up in the woods than you are to hit this fairway. The smart play here, at least for me, in my opinion, is to lay up just short of that 193. Hit something down there that's going to be really safe. Let's say 176 yards. Why would you do that? Because it'll leave you an even 100 yards into this green. If you hit something 176 yards, your odds of ending up in an unplayable or a jail-like predicament in those trees is much less than if you had hit driver. Driver's going to travel farther. That means the cone that you're going to spray that ball in is going to get longer and longer and go into more and more woods and trees out into Narnia. Play a 175-yard shot here, lay up a little short, leave yourself 100 yards in. 100 yards, you need to be working on these distances. 100 yards and in. I know you hear it all the time, and nobody wants to hear that you need to practice 100 yards and in. Get good with your short game, your pitching, your chipping, your wedges, your putting. Do you know that if the average amateur golfer has 36 putts around, you're probably using your wedges to pitch and chip around the greens and hit little partial wedges just as much? That's probably 2/3 of your entire score right there. So I'm going to hit probably a 7-iron to make sure that I'm really safe laying back. 7-iron, I got a good shot of hitting this fairway. I may not, but I won't be too deep in the woods. I can still get around. 7-iron, leave myself 100 yards in. Let's see what happens on this par 4. Struck pretty decent. Gonna get down there with my little patented draw. Gonna fly out to about 170 plus yards, 173, right about where I wanted to land it. It's gonna leave me just a touch over 100 yards into this green. Now here we are with that approach. Again, these are so crucial because the average amateur golfers, they're only hitting about 25% of their greens. If there's 18 holes, 18 greens, 25% of that is about 4.5 greens per round that we're averaging. So let's round down and call it 4. This is probably one of those greens you're gonna miss. It's 103 yards. It's up the hill about 23 feet. There's trees in your way, but the pin is centrally located here. That's another advantage. We can aim for the center of the green. And spoiler alert, no matter where the pin is, you can always aim for the center of the green. It's always a good bet, especially for people like us. 103 yards, 23 feet up the hill. Now this time, when the ball's coming in with a wedge, it's going to get stopped by the ground before it finishes and gets to that sort of steeper descent. It's going to finish more here, meaning it's going to hit and go forward a little bit more, okay? So I need to think about that. I need to take that into account. Where's the miss? Well, it looks like the back right side, long and right, is where I really do not want to be. That short side of me, it doesn't leave me much green to work with, and I believe that portion is also up above the green, meaning that's going to be a super tough shot. If I do anything here, I want to be a little bit short of the pin on the green. I could even be a little bit left of the pin, but still on the green. This time I'm going to hit the 54. Should be just about the right club. Now those trees on the left, I definitely don't want to involve those, but I think this club's going to get up high enough to clear those trees and I don't have to worry about it. Either way, I just don't want to be long and right. I definitely don't want to flub it in front of myself here, but I have a very little odds of doing that with a wedge in my hand. Anyway, I'm playing to my strengths. You need to play to yours. Let's see what we get here. Got to go a little bit. Front fringe. Just didn't quite catch it all. Went 91 yards, but I'm below the hole. I got a really good shot at chipping this thing up close and saving myself. I've got an uphill chip to a pretty simple pin position. Tons of green around me to work with. Tons. So I've just got to have another little chip to put it close to this flag. And at least I'm not back here, off to the back right, in the rough, less green to work with, coming downhill to a pin that's down below me. No chance of stopping it close as an average golfer. I got tons of room here. Let's see what happens with this one. Gonna roll right up there, and again, it's gonna finish about 5 feet away. Uphill putt. We can make those. A 5-foot putt, I believe that's probably gonna be about a 70% chance for most average amateur golfers, if I'm not mistaken, if the numbers that I've been looking at are not lying to me. Anyway, you kind of get the idea. You kind of get the idea. Play smart. Think your way around. So often we're missing greens because we're coming up short. And it's not always because we have mishits. You're definitely going to have mishits where you don't get out of it what you thought you were going to. But more often than not, the reason that we are leaving 60+% of our shots short on approaches is because we're not taking everything in consideration and we don't have realistic ideas of what kind of distances we get with our clubs. Stop and think your way around the course, Don't just go out there and blast away. And as soon as you hit a bad shot, a lot of people will lose hope. They'll just hit a bad shot and then another bad shot and they go, well, this hole's over, to hell with it, I'll just hit anything. Don't do that. Don't do that. All it takes is one good shot to get you right back on track. Of course, one bad shot could turn into an avalanche if you let it. But if you just take your time, think your way through the golf course, think each shot, think about each shot as if it's going to be the only shot you're going to take that day. You've got plenty of time. You're only going to hit one golf ball that whole day. It's going to be 7-iron, or it's going to be driver, or it's going to be a pitching wedge into a green. Whatever it is, that's the only shot you've got today. Take the time to prepare to try and hit the best shot you possibly can each and every time. And then go find it, and then go hit it again. Guys, appreciate it. If you like this video, leave me a thumbs up down below. I appreciate it. We got a lot of new subscribers in here. I wanted to say hey to them. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Click thumbs up on the video. Select all on notifications so you don't miss anything. See you guys in the next video.